Hi everyone, my name is Elahe and I'm the head of voices at IMIX, and I'll be presenting this presentation today with Julia. Shall I start sharing the presentation?
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Cheers. So I'm Julia. I'm the media director at IMIX. I've worked with social media and with print media, digital media, and my background is really journalism. So this is actually the first time I've worked anywhere that isn't journalism. Just to follow, it's very hard to follow on from that amazing talk, actually. But that is a lot of what we're about, is trying to open up doors for people to shape the media better. Whether that is someone who wants to speak to the media, someone who wants to work in the media. We know there's a lot of journalists from a refugee background who have very strong views about the media. It would be great to see more of them being able to access what it can be quite a difficult industry to get into here. We also think about other kinds of storytelling, like when you try and shape fictional narratives as well. So we do stuff like free media training. We're the media partners for Refugee Week with the Refugee Week Ambassador Programme. We work with people with lived experience of migration and being a refugee, where we do kind of one-to-one coaching. So we have some ambassadors for Refugee Week who are on the call today, former and this year's cohort as well. And we're also here to just kind of support organisations if they're going through a rough patch as far as the media is concerned. So we do often kind of get calls from people when there's just been a really difficult situation in local grassroots organisations, let's say with a news story or something similar than that. So yeah, that's who we are. Next slide, please. So as we all know in this call, the narrative is often very dehumanizing in the media. Unfortunately, these examples that we've got on here are not that unusual. And they often use language or even words that might be neutral on their own or in the context, and the repetition become extremely dehumanizing. It's interesting that, you know, if any crime is committed where someone happens to be an asylum seeker or refugee, it's always in the headline, whereas it wouldn't be for someone, you know, of a different immigration status, or and it's never mentioned when it's a positive story. So that's something that we're trying to change and trying to kind of you know, shift the narrative, because so many people, they do get most of their information about migration and refugees from reading the news, unfortunately. Next slide, please. So if we want to change the narrative, we have to think about our different audiences and who we want to target. So we're going to run through who some of those are. You might decide that you have one audience that you really want to target, who are already people who are very interested and supportive. You might want to just double down on that, or you might want to take a different approach. Next slide, please. So when we talk about people's views in the UK on refugees, it tends to fall into about three categories. There's a lot of different studies on this, but this is roughly how it pans out. About a quarter of people are actively, positively wanting to welcome refugees, which is great. I'm sure that most people on this call are in that category, in fact, all of them. And there's many other people out there as well, as we all know. A similar proportion are literally the opposite. There are people who kind of actively feel that refugees shouldn't be helped, which I find is probably quite hard for a lot of us to comprehend. They often hold quite dehumanizing views. There's been a lot in the papers about Lee Anderson, who you might have heard of, who's the Tory MP who's just defected to Reform. I think it's fair to say he's a good representative of that category. We're not going to spend a lot of time trying to win those people over. They're very, very unlikely to ever change their minds, and it's just not worth your energy. But in between, there's another group of people, and we call those the mixed middle, and that's about half the population. And when I talk about them, I try and imagine a dinner table, and I'm sure you've all been in that conversation where you have one person with a very strong view one way and another person with a very strong view the other way, and they're debating away, and you're sitting there, there's two other people at the table who are just listening. So they're those people. They listen to both sides. They might read different magazines. You know, I even know people who get right-wing and left-wing magazines because they want to kind of make their mind up as in the most informed way possible. and they're really up for grabs in terms of persuading as well. So this picture on the right, I don't know about this individual's personal views, but it's from the Telegraph, which is traditionally a conservative newspaper. And I think it sums up how you don't really know what people think until you actually talk to them and ask them. You know, if I saw this couple in the street, I might not necessarily assume that they were particularly involved in refugee rights, but they, for whatever reason, they've decided to host someone in their home, and no doubt that would lead them to all kinds of other discoveries as well. As we know, like a lot of people who signed up to host Ukrainian refugees suddenly realized how frustrating it is, you know, in terms of the refugee family laws and the lack of support for people with their single parents, and lots of different experiences they would have only had because they took that initial act. Next slide, please. So how do you reach the mixed middle, if that's who you want to reach? Well, there's different ways of doing it. Ellie's going to talk later about how you tell your story, and one of the points she always makes is that you might want to just have your story as something that you share with people that you meet in the street, which is absolutely fine. That's perfect. But if you want to reach a wider audience and you're really ambitious about taking your story further, then the media is a great channel because it reaches thousands, if not sometimes millions of people all at once. So some of the main kind of brands you'll probably recognize. Some of them you might think, oh, that's more important than another. So the Times newspaper is a very well-known brand, but actually the Manchester Evening News has more readers. So if you were a Manchester-based charity and you want to get people along to your Refugee Week event, you might be more interested in the Manchester Evening News than the Times. And in terms of reaching people who don't read a lot of news, the Metro is good because that's people often don't read it on their commute. As we mentioned, the Daily Mail is not known for its friendly headlines. So again, if you're promoting Refugee Week, maybe not your first choice. But ITV reaches a lot of people around the country, and actually we've found them really good to work with. So there are lots of opportunities and lots of channels. And I'm just going to talk a bit about the different ways that Refugee Week fits in with that as we go through the next slides. Next slide, please. So one of the things about that first set of headlines that we saw, the really negative ones, is it can be really intimidating to contact a journalist when you see things like that, because you might think that that's just going to be what anything is written up as. And what's really useful is More in Common, which is a charity, or I don't know if it's a charity, it's certainly an organisation set up after the murder of Joe Cox. It really took that speech that she made about having more in common, and it's tried to really research that. So if you've not been on their website, it's a great tool because it's full of polls and research showing what people actually agree on rather than disagree. And I think just this is a reminder that when we're talking to the media, we're not interested in talking to the Lee Andersons of the world. We're interested in talking to those people who are on the bus in the morning, and maybe they haven't made up their mind about how they feel about something. Maybe they don't know anyone who's a refugee, but maybe they'll read a newspaper and they'll read a really powerful piece by Ariana or one of our ambassadors and think, wow, that's actually, I've clearly not been thinking about this hard enough. So those are the people that we want to reach. Next slide, please. Another useful thing with More in Common is that they also have done a lot of research into different audience groups. This is designed to look at different voting segments, but it can be quite useful if you're thinking about your own audiences. So I think a lot of the people in the refugee sector are probably on the left of this screen, and the progressive activists and the civic pragmatists. So that's the progressive activists are those people who are out campaigning and like to talk about politics and are, you know, tend to sport a lot of badges as in the picture, maybe put up posters in their window. I'm sure we all know some people like that. Then the civic pragmatists, they're those ones who are always helping out, and you can always find them volunteering at the food banks and doing the kind of Saturday morning community work. Also a brilliant group of people to engage with. So you might already have those people lined up for your Refugee Week events or your projects. But there's some other groups that it's worth thinking about. So the disengaged bachelors, as they call them, that's those are people who are having a really hard time as it is. But they're not necessarily what's the word? They're not necessarily feeling negative about refugees. They might just not be that engaged. So maybe there's an interesting way that you could engage them as part of your projects or what you're doing for Refugee Week, or by telling a story in the newspaper that really resonates with them. And similarly, established liberals, they're people who've actually done very well. They're the opposite. So they might well have kind of compassionate views, but they aren't necessarily ready to kind of rip up the system. Again, you might be able to engage with them if you're doing something that's in like an art gallery or a space that you might find those kinds of people. You could really use it to raise their awareness a bit about the reality of the asylum system or the feelings of exile that people go through, or many other kind of narratives. And then the ones on the right, we won't bother about too much for this. I don't think they're likely to be kind of your core audience, but I just wanted to share that to get you thinking about how ambitious can you be? It's absolutely fine, and I've been to some amazing Refugee Week events where it's literally a barbecue for everyone who works or is a client of a charity. But maybe there is a really powerful story to tell there that would reach people a little bit wider. Or maybe there's a public facing event that you're planning where actually you could invite people from other charities working in kind of different but like-minded spheres, or partner with a local organization that has its own audience that you could bring in. Next slide, please. So how do we actually change the narrative knowing all of that? It's really tricky. We were talking about narratives this morning, and we were remembering how I'm sure everyone's had a conversation with someone where they keep going back to the same subject and they always see things in a more negative light than a positive light. And however many times you try and change their minds, they seem to come back to the same perspective on things. And I know I've been that person at some points as well. So it is a big thing trying to shift someone's mindset, because you are almost asking them to reconnect their brain in a slightly different way. But it's very much worth trying. Next slide, please. So these are some narratives that you might recognize that stop change because they almost immediately assume the worst in people and shout down what we could be saying that's positive instead. So we don't want to feed into those. We don't really want to engage with them because we end up just kind of going back to that same conversation again and again. Even if you say, for example, people are not illegal, repeating the word illegal is still kind of playing into that narrative, however tempting it might be to just tell people that they're wrong. We find it's more powerful to actually just tell a very different story. Next slide, please. So yeah, this is a bit more about messaging. When we think about how we talk to people, thinking about simple ways to talk about things. There's a lot of jargon in the sector. If you can come back to the original human stories at the heart of it, that's often the most powerful way of telling a story. You can also connect with people's underlying values or goals. Listening to Ariana, and she was talking about women's rights, that's something that's really powerful to me. So immediately I was really interested and thinking about all the kind of culture as well. Again, a lot of us are culture vultures on the call, so hearing a bit about the arts and crafts was really something that resonated. It's also about changing perceptions of an issue, so you're really trying to take people on a journey, and there we find that really showing rather than telling is important. So we actually did some research a few years ago, and we found that you could tell people that they needed to behave better, or that you could tell people to treat their neighbor like themselves, but actually the most compelling way to persuade people was really showing them, really telling human stories and showing the journeys that people go on, and how hard they've had to fight for rebuilding their life or managing to escape a really difficult situation. And then that's the best way to build that empathy that then makes people start to understand a little bit more about why this is so important as an issue. And just to say that one thing, really exciting thing about Refugee Week is it's actually so much embedded in the calendar now, thanks to the hard work of Counterpoints and many others, that it is actually a kind of inbuilt frame there that we can tell positive stories. So I know the rest of the year we get a lot of negative requests around responding to net migration figures and debates and like that. And then there's this one time of the year that we can contact journalists and say, this Refugee Week is coming up. What positive stories, what moving stories, who do you want to talk to, who's going to tell you the reality? And that's really exciting to have. Sorry, next slide, please. Just to say as well, it can feel like a lot to do media on top of everything else you're doing, especially if you're organizing events or you're a frontline charity. So just wanted to pick out a few examples of how media can be effective. That one on the left, that was a woman from North Wales who read a very tragic story about what happened to Alan Kurdi. She was so moved, she went out to Greece and started volunteering. That took her on a journey where she saw the situation in Greece. She came back to North Wales and she started a community sponsorship organisation. So really from quite a rural area where she wasn't going to meet many people in person at that time who had a refugee background, she read through the media and had that journey and then has since then actually created change on the ground. Windrush, most people know, is lots of people were told it was their fault, and then the drip of stories made people realize actually the system was at fault. And some of the ones on the bottom there are people who themselves have experience of being a refugee using their personal experience to argue for better treatment of people today. Next slide, please. And just to say as well, one of the great things about Refugee Week is it's about art, it's about culture, it's about people. And what we know is that ultimately it's human stories that persuade people far more than data or facts and figures. It can be really frustrating when you see figures that are wrong and it's worth pursuing them. But at the end of the day, we're all humans, and the thing that resonates with us the most is a human story. So yeah, I think that's time to hand over to you, Elahe. Is that right?
Yes, thank you so much, Julia. So I'm gonna take it from here. Okay, so Julia explained that if you're organizing an event, it's very nice to engage and get some coverage from the local media outlets that's around you. But why it is important to do that? Because simply on a broad level, it's a great way to shift attitudes, challenge stereotypes, and increase support for people seeking sanctuary in the UK. Because people feel more connected to the issue and the cause that you're talking about, because it's happening locally, so they can actually get involved and they can feel that. And also local media is a trusted source of news for local communities and has the opportunity to reach to a broader section of audience rather than your social media channels. And also it can help increase, if you are having an event, it can help increase attendees to that event, educate people, inform people, secure more donations if you are doing a fundraising event, or like sign up if you are running, if you are having a petition and you are running a campaign. So it's very important to have more attendees, more attraction to that event. But how to do it, how to go about it, how to ask for journalists to come to our event and cover it for us. Basically, the most important element of it, the first step, is to find the right journalist. Finding the right journalist is very important, especially when you work with refugees and migrants, as sometimes their stories and their cause, their motivation to share their stories can be very sensitive. And we need to find a journalist that we can trust and is sympathetic and also passionate about the cause. So it is very important to find the right one. If you don't know anyone already, you can always try to Google the name of your media outlet plus the word migrants or refugees and see who comes up. And then you can Google them to see if they have already covered any similar stories, what languages did they use, and like if they were sympathetic or not. So you can basically do your homework and make sure that you put people with lived experience in the right hand, like they can be safe and they can be protected if they wanted to share their stories. And also if you are inviting them to your event and your event is full of people with lived experience, again, their safety is your responsibility. So it's very important to invite the right person to your event. Also, I think considering the media type, it's really important, and it really depends on the safeguarding requirement. We will talk about safeguarding later, but it is very important to consider whether one medium might be a better suited for the story or for your event. For example, if there is a location that you can invite the TV crew, so can people be named? Can people be pictured? So it's very important for you to balance that. TV crew can film anonymously, but make sure that they do it in a sensitive, not dehumanizing way, because sometimes they try to blur the faces, which is not what we are looking for. There are so many creative ways that they can do it in a more humanized way. And also think about what they can film to create engaging TV, because again, they are working for their audiences. So it's very important that when they want to pitch this event to their editor, they can have a good hook about it. So these are the things that you need to consider before contacting any outlet. But one advice would be, do not overpromise, because you don't want them to be in trouble as well, because they will go to their editor and they have to pitch it. So it's very important to be realistic about what you can offer about that event or that story. And also think about the finished article, how you want it to be appear in the press or in the radio. So make your subject line when you are emailing them a headline. It is very important to think about the final piece, how you want it to be. Choosing a good subject sometimes can be very tricky. There is no straightforward pattern for you to follow, but there are some tips that you can follow to help you to come up with something that is very interesting and also eye-catching. So it's a win-win process. Basically, you are doing the journalist's work for them, because they have to come up with the headline anyway. But when you are offering them a good headline, it's actually half of their job, so they would appreciate it. It also helps to avoid any potential surprises. For example, if the angle that the journalist would go for might be different from what you had in mind in the first place. So you're just trying to avoid that and make sure that the angle is what you are looking for. Okay, safeguarding and boundaries. I think this is really, really important, because if we want people to share their stories, we need to make sure that they are safe, they are protected, and they have a positive experience so they can come back to us. Otherwise, that's it. They don't want. And also sometimes it can be really traumatizing for people to share their stories. So we just want to make sure that we can make it as positive as possible. So when you are about to pitch a story about or on behalf of people with lived experience, it is very important to factor the safeguarding and try to make sure that you communicate these safeguarding conditions to the journalist as soon as possible, because this can be a condition of the interview, and you can make sure that this is something that they will respect. So especially when you are having a local event or the person is local, it is very important that that piece gets some emotional response, both for the reporter and also for the subject. So for example, due to some safety reason, maybe you just try to make sure to protect person's name, for example, to cover their stories anonymously, but some aspects, some details of their life can be very identifiable, so they can be identified easily in the local area, which can be a good thing if the story is really positive, but sometimes it can bring some negative emotions. So we just need to make sure and try to protect that person as much as we can. Journalism, like any other industry, has its own jargon. It's very important to familiarize ourselves with the jargons. And also when we work with people with lived experience, especially when English is not their first language, just try to be mindful of those things. So on the record, off the record, so people would understand when they hear this jargon, what does that mean? on background or unattributed. There is a source or on air, so people understand when they hear these phrases, what does that mean? But normally we would advise people, if they can get confused with these jargons, just try to imagine that everything will be on the record. So if they're not comfortable sharing anything, it's better not to mentioning at all. Just to help you and also ourselves and the people that we work with, we came up with this safeguarding checklist. It is on our website. You can always go and have a look. And if you think that we have missed something, please let us know. But I think it's really it's a useful checklist when you work with people with lived experience, just to make sure that they can understand what are the consequences of this media piece. The media piece will be read anywhere in the world, so it's not only limited to the UK. If they have family back home, or if they are still in the asylum process, we normally advise people to stay anonymously, not to share any important details about their lives. So just to make sure that they can feel positive about this any media work. When we work with the journalists, it is very important because they are very busy and they have loads of emails in their inbox. So we just want to make sure that if they are happy to do something, if they said yes to us, we want to make sure that we kind of work with them. So stick to agreed dates and times. If you agreed with them to answer your phone, try to keep an eye on your phone. Be clear about what's on the record and what's off the record. If there are any safeguarding issues or conditions, you need to email them and make them the condition of your interview. Tell them immediately if you are not happy with the way you said something, and if you regret immediately. So it's try to communicate these things as soon as possible before the piece gets published, because once it's live there, it is very, very difficult to remove it. Complain privately if something happens, because sometimes it can be a genuine mistake. So not everything is on purpose. But if you cannot go, you can't take it any further, we are here to help you and support you. So you can email us if there was any difficulties with that. When you're trying to pitch your story, sometimes it doesn't happen. Like even for us that we work with journalists regularly, sometimes with the first email or the second email, they don't get back to us because, as I said, again and again, they are very, very busy and they have full inboxes of the email. So it's very important to chase up with them. Try again. This is just an example of a local event that we tried, local newspaper, local radio and broadcast station. And at the end, BBC Northwest got it. So it doesn't mean that the last person who took it was the worst, but sometimes it actually would work better in your favor. And this is my favorite part of the Refugee Week. It's about the Refugee Week Ambassador Program, something that we have been doing in collaboration with Counterpoints Arts. It's called the Refugee Week Ambassador Program. So we recruit ambassadors across the UK, people with lived experience of seeking refuge in the UK. We will train them, support them, mentor them, and make sure that they are empowered enough to share their stories. Hopefully, this has happened in the past, and we are hoping that this would be the case for this year. They have the opportunity to share their stories and have a voice, because it's a platform. So we basically give them a mic to share their stories. And also they could be a part of the national festival. They are amazing. And if you are organizing an event and you are looking for a speaker, a public speaker, try to get in touch with us as soon as possible, because these people are based across the UK. And when we approach Refugee Week, they get really, really busy because there are so many requests for them. But if you are looking for a speaker for your event, try to get in touch with us as soon as possible. And when Refugee Week is finished, we don't say goodbye with them. This is the beauty of our work. So we try to keep them in our network, and they will join IMIX Expert by Experience network, and they will become part of our family. This is some of the media outlets that we work with in the last few years. So as you can see, there are from local outlets to the national ones, and some of them are they just know us. So when we approach Refugee Week, they are expecting us to get in touch with them, or they are just proactive and they get in touch with them to see what who have been recruited this year and what are their stories. So these are a few media highlights. As I said, I really love the ambassador program. We had in the past few years a barber with a passion for teaching, an Iranian classical musicians with a degree in animal genetic, an actor, an activist who speaks 6 different languages, and a doctor from Venezuela running marathons in her spare time. So these are just some examples of the ambassadors. But today, I actually have invited some of our friends who have been Refugee Week ambassadors, and actually a very, very brand new one. So I'm not sure if they have already joined us. Can I just check if Lojin or Malka are here?
Lujin is here. I saw her in the chat.
I'm here. I'm Lujin.
Hi, Lojin.
Hi, all. Hope you are all doing well.
Lejin, do you mind just sharing your experience of being an ambassador, Refugee Week ambassador in the UK? How did you feel about it?
Yeah, sure. I'm opening my camera now. I don't know if you can see me. Can you?
Yes.
Yeah. To be honest, my experience was very useful. I was known like other people in the UK and different part of the world knew me as someone who who had a dream and tried to work for it. And I feel like I inspired other people in the UK and around the world to not be ashamed of being a refugee. And also, I have some like articles in the Mirror with the Refugee Week and the Metro a newspaper. So for me, I think it's a really good reference. Like when I apply to work, you know, when they do due diligence, so employers can see me in a in a in a good way. Someone who did something, someone who tried to achieve their dream, and so it was very useful. Now I'm in Dubai, and I work as a program host. I interview celebrities. I would love to do that, but in the UK, or in Dubai, where I can tackle social issues, not just like interviewing celebrities. This is my dream now. So fingers crossed. And yeah, it was a very good experience. And thank you so much for helping me being in this good image in the media, because this is very important.
Thank you so much, Lojin. It's so lovely to see you, first of all, because I haven't seen you for ages. Thank you so much for sharing those beautiful words. It meant a lot.
Oh, thank you. Me too. It's very nice seeing you and seeing Julia.
Can you bring some of those celebrities back for us so we can they can be our celebrities TV?
They are Middle Eastern celebrities. They speak Arabic. But my plan in the future, I really hope where I can meet Western celebrities. Yeah, this is my dream now.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Can I just check if Malka is here as well?
I don't think Marka is here, but we have Bashi. Unless Marka, no, unfortunately Marka's not here, but Bashi is on the call.
Amazing. So as I said, Bashi is our very brand new Refugee Week ambassador. We've been so lucky to recruit an amazing cohort, but one of them him on the spot and ask him that why he applied to be a Refugee Week ambassador in the first place.
Okay, hello everyone. I hope you can hear me well. First of all, yes, my name is Bushi. So my real name's on the display, but it's hard to pronounce and read. But like, I'll say it anyway. So my real name is Al Pyo, but I prefer Bushi. So call me Bushi, it's fine. So first of all, I'm deeply honored and profoundly humbled to be selected as one of the Refugee Week ambassador. Thanks to Elahe and thanks to everyone at IMIX. So my story is like, it's simple. So I became a refugee by accident. The original plan, like I came to the UK in 2019 was to study and then go back. But I'm from Burma originally. Sorry to mention that I'm from Myanmar or Burma, like it's two names. So recently there's coup happens, the military take over the democratic government. So we are kind of having like a civil war, rampaging war everywhere around the country. So that's why, so I have no choice to like, like my family assets got frozen and everything. So I don't want to like say all my troubles here, but like all other refugees and asylum seekers, I'm faced the same problems. I can't go back home. And even though I lost contact with my family and everything, so I have no choice rather than to apply asylum and stay as a refugee in the UK. So the thing is, imagine like from being a spoiled international student to, asylum seeker who have nothing. So like, so I apply asylums, like I study in Sheffield, and then Home Office gave me a property in Newcastle, amazing city. And then honestly, I know no one and I know nothing about the asylum and what's the refugee, what is the asylum process. I absolutely knew nothing. So the organizations like, words like the West End Refugee Services and lots of organization. The thing is, so even though finding a lawyer is hard for me to fight my case, but luckily I got my refugee status last year. So right now I have so many options. So I can work, so how can I say that? So my education is from the medical background. So, I can take some exams to be a GP doctor here, but hopefully there's one dream as me. So maybe in the future, I might get interviewed by Liu Jin as a singer, The thing is, I'm trying to make an impact in like a musical career as well. So, okay, so enough about me. So why I decided to, apply for the ambassador program is that I believe like together we can make an impact and a change on the asylum system and the refugee process, no matter how big or small the impact is. I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to share like there's loads of people like who is fleeing their home and finding a new home, like a safe place to raise their family, to start a new life and everything. So that is why I chose like with how can I say that sorry, I'm rambling. So this is my first time public speaking. So what I believe is that altogether we can make an impact and change to the system for the asylum. So I speak to Chronicle Live. There's an article about me. I'll share the link later in the chat, and then I'll share my socials and another marketing stuff. You can buy Apple Music on any major music platform with my name. Feel free to listen to my songs. So sorry, enough about me. So I'm really happy to do to share my story with other fellow asylum seekers, refugee. I'm saying this not as a Burmese boy, not as an asylum seeker or a refugee. I'm saying this as an earthling. I'm a human. I'm a people of the earth. I'm one of the people from earth. No gender, nothing, no nationality. We're human. We hate brutality. The thing is, I hate war. So many people like kill in war, both sides. So I don't want that. I don't like that. Even though my voice, like, you know, have limit, it's good to be heard anyway. So that's all I wanted to share, and feel free to, you know, contact me with the IMIX, everything. I'm really, really, really happy to help, like, in the future program. So that's my story. So if you want to know anything, or, you know, needs help, I'm more than happy to help with the process, with everything. I'm based in Newcastle.
Thank you
answer the
so much,
question.
Bushi. It was
Thank
wonderful.
you,
Thank you.
Elahe. Thank you.
Not at all. So yeah, if you want to learn more about this year's Refugee Week ambassadors, there will be introductory blog post about every individuals on the Refugee Week website. Not now, but there will be, and you can get to learn, get to know them
Hello,
better.
sorry.
And if you're looking for a public speaker for your event, you can get in touch with us. Thank you so much. Over to you, Laura.